Welcome to the Movie Overload Podcast. 3 friends, 100 films. My name is Hannah.
I'm Reese.
I'm Hunter.
Well, there we are. That's our intro.
That is the official intro.
It's very exciting. A good time. So, today is the episode that we've all been waiting for the last however many episodes. I think one.
The one episode.
Yeah.
One and a fake trailer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 5 seconds long.
I guess we did do that, and that was
Doesn't
just
count. Probably doesn't
hopefully
exist
it's
anymore
gone
if you're
now.
hearing this.
Yeah. By the time you're here, hopefully the trailer's gone because it was recorded spontaneously and there's background noise and it was weird.
It's great.
But
The trailer was kind of funny, though.
yeah, I like it. It's quite magical. But also it will never be heard again
Yes.
because it's only for us.
Yes.
But we skipped like 24 years of movies between this one and the previous one, right? This is
think so.
1926.
Yep.
So that's crazy.
Sure is.
And it does not feel like too big of a step in terms of like what cinema does. Like
Yeah.
in some ways.
The video quality is sharper. It's obviously a lot longer.
Right.
I
But
could see people's
yeah,
faces
I mean,
this time. That was
it just
nice.
yeah, true. I could tell who everyone was. It just has more scale, but
Mhm.
a lot of it is kind of the same, yeah.
Yeah, but as far as like narrative convention goes, it's like
Mhm.
it's still pretty much the same. I mean, we
True.
got the dialogue boxes
Right.
now, which is a pretty
True.
And
big
music.
addition. Yeah, that's true. Although I think
Right.
at the end, so I think we all watched it on Canopy. But at the end, it has like a separate card that's like, the score was written by blah blah blah.
Right.
And so I don't think that it was originally there with the movie.
Yeah, I've looked
Oh.
at some of that. There's some talk about that. There's definitely like I don't know if there was any originally when it came out, but there definitely has been some. Like I think there was one in like the late 50s that was done, and there probably are some that were done more recently as well to accompany it.
Gotcha.
Which makes sense because a lot of the one on Canopy. I think Hannah watched a different one on YouTube and that ended up happening, but the one on Canopy is really nicely like synced up.
Mhm.
There's some good like hits and stuff that timed with the action.
Yeah, it's a
and
pretty,
it's pretty
good
cool.
score.
It's all
It
really
also
nicely done.
is weird because it uses a lot of other songs,
Yeah,
like just
Mhm.
kind of in there randomly.
I started. Did they put like, "Oh Christmas Tree" or something?
I think
in there one
so.
time? And I was like, "Is this to have like the same melody that's used for a different song, or are they just putting a Christmas song?"
Right. Well, at first when I thought that it was like the score that was actually for the movie, like
Right.
originally written, I was
Yeah.
like, I heard a theme and I was like, wait, I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. Is this just a
Mhm.
really iconic
just a
score?
song.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
no,
nah, they're
it's-
just using other songs.
Yeah,
and
I think
I
it's
was
just
not paying
kind of
attention.
filling in. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
But, yeah,
interesting.
so it's kind of a mix of both for sure.
Mhm. But I mean, so as the Charlie Chaplin fan of the pod,
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting watching. The movie. Did we already say it's The General?
We did not.
Yes.
Okay.
We have
Oh.
not talked about this now. It's the
Man,
general.
we'll do
It's
that like
the
every
general.
time. Maybe by like the 10th podcast, we'll remember to like announce
Right.
the film, give a
Yeah, we're still
summary.
kind of figuring all that out.
We're not very
It's okay.
organized
But
here.
yeah. So before I continue about my Chaplin spiel, Hunter, why don't you give us the initial information on The General?
Well, it's a movie from 1926. It is probably the last like most notable Buster Keaton film that he did from his run in the 20s, which was his best time. And he has fun with trains.
Really does.
I don't know how deep into this I'm supposed to get.
I don't know. I mean,
That's kind of the basics of it. I
Basic-
guess.
yeah,
It's just
there's
an
not-
old silent action comedy.
mhm.
Didn't you say, though, because like this is one of his most memorable films, but didn't you say it was kind of a flop?
Yeah, so
the moment.
it came out and nobody saw it. It did not make its money back. It got a lot of mixed reactions from critics and audiences, and it was kind of considered a flop. And it actually had some pretty major negative consequences for his career that we can talk about in a little bit. But then, I mean, just decades later, and now, of course, like it's regarded as like his masterpiece. Like
Right.
We
Oh,
look
yeah.
back on this and like this is the best thing he did, and
Mhm.
I think he thought it was the best thing he did. He was always very proud of it, but yeah, it kind of sucked at the time.
That's so weird because
I
it's
know.
like
It's bizarre.
It
And he was
feels-
already loved. Like he was
Yeah.
successful before this. Like
because he did Sherlock Jr.
Yeah, he did
That
Sherlock
was a big
Jr. He
one.
had a lot of feature films in the 20s and shorts before that were all like, as far as I can tell, like he was totally fine. And then this came out, and they were like, I don't know about this one, guys.
This had to be a huge budget too in the
It was.
20s.
It's a lot.
It
That was
costs a lot of money.
insane.
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of movie that's like emulated now. Like it
Mhm.
still feels like very easily you add in color and sound and, you know,
Yeah.
explosions, maybe a few more explosions, and it's like the
Sure.
kind of movie that could come out now.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't
Mhm.
feel so far away from, you know, what we're doing. Like A Trip to the Moon does in some ways, where it's like I can see how this led to what we have now, and it's
Right.
very good for what it is, but we don't have things exactly like this anymore. Like we were talking about
Mhm.
how the genre of sci-fi has changed, but like
True.
we have Civil War era movies, we have like
Right.
chase movies. It was just a train chase before we had car chase.
Right.
You know?
And some of the things that I saw people like talking about that kind of rubbed them the wrong way are things that now just kind of don't mean anything to us.
Like what?
They were just like changing tastes. Like in the movie, there's a bit towards the end where the big battle's happening, and there's a kind of a gag made about some people dying,
Right. Yeah.
and like with modern sensibilities, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I see some guys kind of like clutch their chest and fall to the ground, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm more laughing at the joke because it is kind of funny just having these guys are falling around him, and he's just like, what?
He like doesn't realize.
I
what's
guess I'll
happening.
try the next guy.
Right.
And then finally, like he loses his blade. He like tries to draw the sword, and like the blade like flies off, and you just get a shot of the guy who was shooting them all like with the blade just in his back,
I
and
thought that was
he's dead on the
hilarious.
hill,
Great,
and it's
yeah.
like. Yeah, I think
It's a
to
good
us
gag.
that's like it's funny, and it's like it's kind of dark, but it's funny. But I think for the time that was like, whoa,
Hmm.
you can't do that, dude.
Violence.
I mean, it did seem kind of dark to me at the time. Just
Right.
I mean,
It
I
is,
mean now,
like, it
just
totally
because
is.
of thinking about that time and like.
Yeah, but it's also
the other
like
ones I've seen from
compared
the
to
era.
things that we see now, it's like it's pretty tame.
Right. No, there's not
So-
even blood.
No,
you know,
Yeah,
it's,
there
it's
was
very
no gore.
it's
people
sterile.
just kind of follow.
even
And it
though
was
it's
like a
actually
little bit
happening.
sad, but it's also like, man, we're talking about the Civil War here. I don't
Right.
feel like there's anything that's like not really brutal about this.
And I
you
think,
know?
and it's funny too, because like the movie is, I think it was intended to be more dramatic than a lot of his other work. Like it's still really funny,
Mm.
and I look back on it more just like I enjoyed the stunts and the comic, the jokes and stuff. But like, I think it was intended to be like kind of a serious take,
Right.
on that stuff.
Yeah.
because it was a thing that happened. So.
Yeah, and that was kind of something I thought was strange, was seeing a movie taking place in the Civil War where like the North is the bad guys.
That's what I thought too, and there is a
Yeah,
a
that was
reason
interesting.
for that. It's because this is more or less a real thing that happened.
Oh,
This is it's based off of a real thing. There were some Union soldiers that hijacked a train and were intending to take it across enemy lines and kind of destroy like I think some bridges, just like some probably whatever they were trying to do in the movie. And it's just taking that story and putting somebody, you know, kind of an extra party being affected by that event.
gotcha.
So it's like, but yeah, I remember thinking that too. I was like, why would you make a movie where your protagonist is on the losing side?
Right.
And I thought that was very odd, but there is a reason, because it's the real thing that happened, and it's just easier to put that on the victim's side of that, being like, oh, I'm just a guy who has a train.
Right.
These guys stole my train.
Yeah.
Did that
So-
play into people not liking it? Did they
don't
not like
know.
that he was?
It's possible. I didn't come across that, but I know there were definitely some tensions around that. Like, there was all this stuff where, like, I think they were wanting to film in Georgia or something, but like there was probably some tension around filming something like that there, so they ended up filming in Oregon, where like it didn't matter
That
as
makes
much.
sense.
And they had to, you know, try and have it
Right.
look like Georgia.
Well, because I was looking at this stuff and I was like, I think it's supposed to take place in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And I remember looking at it, I was like, I mean, so I've like spent a lot of time in both Tennessee and Oregon. It's supposed to be just above Chattanooga, which is,
Yeah.
I've been there and it doesn't look like that. And I was like, wow,
Mhm.
this really does look like Pacific Northwest scenery. Like
Yeah.
it's really pretty.
exactly
and I
what
can't
it is.
imagine that
The whole
Chattanooga
thing.
would have ever looked exactly like that.
The whole thing's in Oregon. Yeah,
That's rad.
they did a lot of it in kind of the same locations. A lot of those sets were like right outside the hotel where they were all staying. Like it's all up there. Yeah,
it seemed like it
That's
had
really
a
cool.
lot of locations.
right.
Like there were a
doesn't.
ton of different shots.
It totally did not. I don't
Huh.
think it did.
That's cool.
I read a little bit about that, and like at least a lot of the like the train shots of the train going through places, it's the same places
Yeah,
over and over
that
again,
makes
but
sense.
like shot at different angles
Yeah.
and different places.
Well,
So
it worked.
It looks
Yeah.
different.
I bought it.
Totally. Me
Mhm.
too.
It totally
I
works. yeah.
mean, some of those shots though with the train where it's like it'll show a train going by and there's like a camera that's like following it.
Yeah.
Like, is there a
I had-
separate train track
So
and another train on there?
sometimes I looked. I did find some information about that. They said that there was either another track and they had like a platform with the camera and equipment on it rolling alongside it. Sometimes there was like an extra track to the side. Sometimes it was on the same track, like in front or behind. And sometimes I think they said they had like a car that was like rebuilt to allow for that would drive alongside. I
That's
think is
really
what
cool.
they said, and they did that sometimes. So it kind of depended, but yeah. And
Some of
every
those shots
time,
are just like, man,
yeah.
how
But, like,
did they do that?
And they had like those temporary tracks were like only so long, so each shot could only be like 15 seconds tops or something. I think they said, and they had to reset every time, and they would do like some of these like quite a few takes. It sounds like maybe up to like 6 times. I think I saw on like some of these, and like you had to be driving the train and the track, like the platform on the side or something, and like you had to do it and then take like 2 hours or something to reset
Oh my
everything and
gosh.
try again.
That
And, like,
is
It was
insane.
insane.
Yeah.
They did a lot on this.
Wow. I mean, I guess that's one thing that definitely has been upgraded
Mhm.
is like the ability to not just have a stable camera
Right.
and also filming outside. Those
Mhm.
are, I guess, things we haven't seen before.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
it's
not the first time that's been
huge, yeah.
done, but it's the first time in this
Mhm.
list.
There's a lot of big
But-
scale shots in here for sure.
Yeah, no, just stuff that like is really clean and very smooth in
Mhm.
ways that I just
Totally.
would not have expected as somebody who is a Jim Jarmusch fan, and
Mm-hmm.
he has movies from like the 80s with like lots of these like moving car shots, and they're just not stable at all. And I'm just like, I guess
Yeah.
there wasn't any way to do image stabilization or just, be careful with the camera. So
Mhm.
I just assumed for some reason, just from watching those films from like the early 80s, that like, you have a moving shot, it's going to look a little wobbly. But
Right.
like in 1926, it did not look that way.
Doesn't look at or yeah, like I think it looks fine. It looks I never really noticed any of the camera issues or anything. It was just like this looks great.
Mhm.
It's just they got so much in frame that was just
Yeah.
so good.
Like, they must have used some really interesting lenses, I think,
Probably.
because if there's a separate track or whatever,
Mhm.
for some of those shots of the train, it's like you'd have to be really close
Mhm.
to be able to follow it, but it has such a wide range of view on the train
Yeah,
that
they get lots of different angles, yeah.
yeah.
It's very impressive, all of it.
Mhm.
I kind of alluded. I feel like I should also mention. I hinted that at the cost of this movie earlier, and I didn't say it because I thought that maybe I was going to talk about it later. I'm just going to talk about it now. They initially gave him like $400,000, which I think is like, I think they said like 5.7 million ish
Not
by
bad.
today's. It ended up costing almost double that
Oh,
because
Whoa.
of the repeated takes and just his kind of perfectionism that he was trying to inject into this movie. Because like they
Right.
were getting the sets right, they were getting the trains right, and a lot of these were vintage trains, but like everything was just trying to be just right. And yeah, I think they said the final cost was around 750,000, and that also hurt the returns on that because
That's a
they
lot.
only got back like 2/3 of that or something.
dang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like, I mean, even adjusting for inflation, even
Mhm.
at the moment, like current prices to make a film, that's actually like relatively cheap. Like
Mhm.
Wes
Right.
Anderson's movies are all more expensive than that, and he's
Yeah.
known for being like
Mhm.
pretty
True.
good with money and not using that much. But I guess it's also worth noting that at the time, you weren't charging as much for tickets, even
Right.
if you're adjusting for inflation. You weren't
Yeah.
charging that much for tickets, and also probably less people are going to the movies.
Yeah, and most of your
in
movies weren't this
1926.
ambitious.
Yeah,
Like most things probably weren't doing stuff like this.
right.
So
It was
there's
like
lot
a
going on.
weird experimental thing to
Mhm.
spend that much money on, and expect to make that much money back. Like that's
Right.
crazy.
And yeah, it might have seemed like a good bet at the time, and then just did not work out.
Yeah. But apparently I mean, that's the thing that's fun about that kind of thing. I mean, it's sad for the artist,
Right.
sad for Buster Keaton that he didn't get to make
Yeah.
something else like this.
Yeah,
But,
it was very weird.
But for us, it's pretty great.
Yeah,
Because
it-
we get to have the context of even those like, movies that ended up flopping,
Mhm.
things that wouldn't get made even normally during those times that, somebody's passion project somehow makes it through.
Yeah.
And we get
Definitely
to
was
reap
that.
the benefits of that.
Hmm. Yeah, it turned out good in the end for sure. Had a good legacy, even if it didn't have a good initial reception.
Mhm.
So
At what point did people start looking at it and thinking, Oh, that's actually really good. Like, I
think I
wonder when
saw,
that
like-
shift of mindset happened
Right.
for
I
people.
remember seeing like Orson Welles really liked it. So like I think probably even just like 50s, 60s, somewhere in there, I think people started people who were talking about film and involved in that were like, this is actually really great. Like, what are we talking about?
Ahead of its time.
That seems
in
like
a lot
that
of
was
ways.
kind of when, some of that shift was happening.
Yeah, well, I did some reading on it too, and I remember seeing that quote from Orson Welles where he said, like, I think this is probably, he's like, it's the greatest silent film, but it's also probably the greatest film of all time. That's coming from
people
the guy
feel
that made
comfortable
Citizen
putting it out there.
Kane.
Like to this day, it remains on lists of the best movies ever made. Like, it's just acknowledged as a really, really stellar work, and
Yeah.
it should be, I think.
It is on Letterboxd Top 250, but I checked on there, and of all of the Buster Keaton films that he has on that list, I think it's actually the lowest one.
Really?
I think so. It's like at 220 something. Sherlock Jr. is like 50 or 60, which is surprising.
Interesting.
But I think that one's a short technically, right? Like it's 45 minutes.
I'm not
Have you
super
seen that
sure.
one?
I have not seen that. No.
Okay.
I saw a couple in my film class like a year ago. I saw Cops and 1 Week, I think it's
Okay.
called, which were both pretty great. 1 Week is really fun.
Some of those short ones are able to just like have way more gags,
Mhm.
which I noticed
Right.
as well in Chaplin. Like his early stuff are just like gag after gag after gag, whereas his longer movies, he's trying to actually have a plot, and
Right.
so
Definitely
there's a
is
lot
true here
less
as well.
time devoted to those things. But something I will say, like I think so Buster Keaton at this time, based off of just the general, which is the only thing of his I've seen, I guess at this point, has like very clearly like very big kinds of set pieces that are just like phenomenal. Just like how did you manage to film that?
Even in the shorts, there's some big scale.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Interesting. I do want to see more of him because
Should
from
watch some.
Chaplin's point of view is way different. Surprisingly, I always assumed that they'd just be like pretty much doing the same thing we talked about in pretty much the same conversation at all times. Really, if you're talking about silent films or you know slapstick comedy, it's like
kind of hit
you
the
know
same thing,
Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, but Chaplin has as his production is like way less complex. It's just you got a stable camera set up in like one position, and then everything about the humor, everything about the comedy is all just in Chaplin's acting. So he's not really writing these like crazy complex things. He's just one of the greatest actors I feel like I've ever watched, where he's just able to do these like. There's this bit in Modern Times which I really, after watching this movie, I was like, I really wish we could cover it and be able to talk about those in context with each other. But it's not on the list, unfortunately. That's
Maybe
my fault, I guess.
something else with that.
But yeah, there's a bit with this like roller skating arena sort of, and he's on the top floor of this mall that has just like this ledge where you just can easily fall off, and he's roller skating blindfold backwards, and he doesn't realize that the ledge is there, and he just like gets so close every time to like falling off, and he just everything about the humor and that is all just like his physicality, which is I've noticed in some places it was present with Keaton, but in a very different
kind of
way.
do both. Like it's different for sure. Keaton stuff definitely has more emphasis, like you said, on just kind of set piece stuff, like the environments and everything kind of relying on stunt work around an environment or something.
Right, like there's
in
a
1
bit
Week
where
there's
he
like
had
a freaking big house that like moves and rocks and spins and stuff, and it's insane.
Right.
And then stuff like this, of course, the trains. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was thinking of that one bit where they have planks on the tracks trying to like get the train to stop and whatever,
Oh my gosh.
he picks one up and he chucks it at the other one,
Yeah.
and so they both fly off.
It's so
and it's
good.
like that. There's no way that wasn't practical,
And boy, like he had to like nail that. Like he got that wrong. It would have been bad.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff like that. That's like totally,
Yeah.
his precision nailed all that stuff.
Yeah. And did they actually like? I mean, I guess spoiler alert. I don't know. Did they actually destroy that train?
They
that
did.
fell off the bridge?
Yes.
The bridge moment. What?
Yep. So I found a nice article that talks about a lot of this stuff, and they do mention the train. They built that bridge in like 2 weeks. All of that, I guess, was specifically made for this, and they set it on fire, and then they started the train, and like the guy who kind of got it rolling just jumps out. I guess there was like a paper mache man like in the driver's area, and it just the whole thing just collapses and it falls into the river.
Probably only had one take on that one.
Yep.
Huh?
Like again, like I was talking about that with Hannah. Like some of the stuff, like stuff like that, you get one go at that.
I was
And,
like,
boy.
oh, wow, I hope no one got hurt. Like,
Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh, there was a story they had about like there was like a woman in the crowd like watching this get done who didn't know that the guy jumped out of the train before it
no.
did that and like fainted because she thought someone was in
That's funny.
That's the most 1920s thing I've ever heard.
Literally
in my
what
life.
I was
and
thinking.
I guess Buster Keaton wanted to be in it. He wanted to like be driving the train forward and like jump into the water
Oh no.
as it was like falling, and his wife talked him out of it.
Good. 'Cause
So-
he would have died.
Why?
Because he just does that.
Oh, Buster Keaton.
I want to talk
Wow.
about that too, like his kind of history with being a stunt person and like
Oh,
tricks
yeah.
and stuff is really great because
Go
it
right
started.
on ahead.
If we didn't have anything else to talk about, because I feel like that kind of works, because he's been doing this for a very long time. It turns out he was like born into a family who did like vaudeville, like stage productions, and just did all these weird comedy routines and stuff on stage. And apparently he's been doing this, or he had been doing this since he was like 3. And one of the gags of this performance is that his dad would pick him up and throw him into scenery or the audience. And he just had to learn to fall correctly.
Nice.
He would, like he said later, he's like, if I wasn't falling right, I would have totally been hurt or like killed maybe sometimes. But he just knew how to land and like break his fall correctly, like that whole time. And he like never got hurt. Like there were child abuse allegations, and he was like, look, like I'm fine. And like they never got anywhere, I don't think.
Did he
but it
have
was like,
other
whoa.
siblings who randomly died
I-
from like?
No, I don't think so. I didn't hear anything about
chucking their
that.
kids
but
into
just,
the
like, I just
audience.
saw that, like, he like they literally put a suitcase handle on his clothes
Oh my
to
gosh.
like make it easier to throw him around.
That's funny. How old was he?
That's so crazy.
I think he was doing this I don't know how long they were throwing him around, but he was doing this till he was like 21-ish.
Wow.
These kind of things, and then that's kind of when he started to get out of it.
So how old was he when he made the General?
General, he was born in 95 and was 26, like 25, so he'd been like 30.
Hmm.
So he'd
Sounds about
already been
right.
doing film stuff for a while.
And that's
like 10
interesting
years.
if you relate that back to Trip to the Moon, because he was an illusionist and started doing all
Right.
the special effects, and then he grew up doing stage
Yep.
comedy routines.
There you go. Yep. Yeah,
And
it
then
totally
gets into
turns into
stunt
his
work
thing.
and-
Yeah, he totally just kept going like on all this stuff. It just was like he was just able to do these very physically demanding things in a way that, like, obviously they were dangerous anyway, but he was just more naturally equipped to handle them because,
Mhm.
like he says it's just second nature to him to fall correctly and do all these things. So it's like it didn't matter as much to him, I guess. So he could do more impressive stuff.
Are there any crazy falls he takes in the General? I feel like I remember something happening, but
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I noticed anything specifically.
when he's on the whatever it's called, like the pedal.
Oh, yeah.
thing
Yeah,
on
he
that
totally
train,
biffs it.
and it
The thing flies off, and he's like, "Ugh."
and he just like
He just, like,
flies
falls
out,
on
and
his
I
butt,
wondered if
like-
that was like real somehow.
I mean, I assume it was. I'm going to assume that most of the stuff here was like as legit as
Yeah,
it
he
could
doesn't
be.
seem into special effects.
No, yeah.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I guess if he wanted to jump out of that train, and then
he's just gonna yeet himself right out of that thing.
Well, so I saw a review on Letterboxd that just made me crack up. It was like, I don't want to hear about Tom Cruise doing his own
Right.
Yeah.
stunts for Mission
Yeah,
Impossible
I
ever
totally
again.
I totally saw somebody comparing it to that. Like they were like, oh, it's the Mission Impossible of the 20s.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, Buster Keaton wins.
yeah, like it's kind of,
Yeah,
it really
seriously.
was kind of an action film. Like,
And Tom Cruise even like broke his leg on the
Right.
most recent one, just like
He did?
hopping over a small bit of a building.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well,
They
he
left
like
that
totally
shot in
jumps
there.
across huge buildings, and he like broke his foot or something. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, you
on
see
that
his like
breach.
ankle go back if you
Yeah,
look
it's
closer.
bad.
Ow!
But
Oh,
like
wait,
it
maybe I
wasn't
remember
totally
that.
crazy of a
Sometimes.
shot. Like even like, I guess he
It's
just
a
didn't.
long
he-
jump though. Like
It's
I feel like
it's
pretty
fair.
impressive. Like,
Yeah.
He's just
couldn't
no
do that.
Buster Keaton.
Just-
He can't handle
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There
I guess he just didn't
totally-
learn how to smash
How to
his
fall.
shin right.
There were totally some
Yeah.
stories about like him hurting himself. Apparently, there's like some like water falls on him in Sherlock Jr. and they said he broke his neck, but he didn't even realize it. Apparently, I don't know how that works,
How?
but apparently he broke his neck, but like didn't realize it until like years later.
Maybe he has that brain disorder where he doesn't feel pain.
I don't know,
That would make sense.
but like
I
yeah,
would.
just,
I
like,
wouldn't be surprised
all
at this
this
point.
stuff. Yeah, like he totally was in harm's way and all this stuff, but it was just whatever. And he was
Wow.
totally fine, I guess.
That's
Aside from
just-
breaking his neck.
Wow. That kind of stuff is just really impressive because you don't think about that as much with films now is just like
Yeah, you just
the
now
idea
if
of like
something like that
risking
happened,
your
you'd be like,
life to make a movie
Right.
is crazy. And I mean, I guess there are stunt drivers and stuff like that now, but I don't.
Or safety equipment's also a lot.
Right.
It exists now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, also because you can like green screen a harness
Yeah.
out or something like
Right.
that. Like it's always weird watching like behind the scenes stuff on like big blockbusters and that kind of thing now, because it's like, wow, somebody's in a harness for a scene I just never would have even thought they needed a harness for. But like here, it's like, oh, he's just gonna jump out of a train, or you know, the thing he's on is just gonna ride right off the tracks and break into a million pieces, and
Totally.
he's just gonna go for it.
That's dangerous.
And he gets like one try for
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah,
of
a
those
lot
shots.
that, yeah, totally. It's all very, very
But yeah, when I looked it up, it was labeled, I think, as action adventure movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, 1920s, they were getting crazy.
There's totally jokes, but like it's definitely like it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think people thought it was going to be funnier than it was. Like when it came out, that was one of the things too.
I
It's
actually
like,
thought it was funny.
yeah, I thought it was
It
too.
had some
Like,
pretty
it's
good
totally funny,
gags,
but I think
yeah.
that compared to his other work, it probably is like it's just not doing as much of the comedic stuff.
That makes sense.
So
Because if I think of any of the Chaplin films I've seen, all of them have more gags in them, and all of them, like, there are just bits in pretty much all of his movies that legitimately make me laugh out loud. Like, there's this great bit where there's this police, like, he's driving a car, and there's a policeman who's like trying to stop him because he's trying to just go through the intersection, even though it's not really his turn, and the policeman's like trying to get him to stop, and then somebody like spills a jar of tar, and then the policeman gets stuck, and then he gets out of the car and like tries to help him, but he accidentally kind of pushes him down, and then his hands and feet are both stuck there.
Oh my gosh.
And it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, and like 3 cops end up getting stuck in the tar there.
gosh.
And then Charlie Chaplin pulls out and like pulls backwards, and then another cop comes up and walks through and just falls straight down a manhole. And it's
Jeez.
just, there's so much going on, but that kind of stuff like really gets me. And I was looking forward to that in this one, and there were probably only like 2 or 3 bits that were like just like really, really solid like that.
Yeah.
But the rest of it was just like, how?
It's a little bit
This is a
self-serious.
really solid action movie. It's
Right.
not as much
Yeah.
of a comedy.
Right. It has stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's things that are happening that are obviously bigger scale and more important, and less time for jokes and stuff. I mean, Hannah and I were kind of talking last night about like it starts with a joke, like where she like starts following behind him and he doesn't realize it, and it's just a joke that totally relies like not on any just noting it's an entirely physical joke. Like it's just
Right.
relying on the spacing of the actors in the frame, like, and just one that not realizing that there's a person behind them. It's kind of
As
funny.
he knocks on
It's
her
cute and
door.
funny. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's so
exactly.
cute.
Like, and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely has kind of a lighthearted jokes and stuff like that sometimes, and then jokes in the action sometimes as well. But yeah, it's not really as much of a focus as it might be in the other works for sure.
Which is fair. I mean, it sounds like doing a lot of this action kind of whatever would have been pretty experimental at the time even.
I think so. Yeah.
So I guess if that
took
was
the
really his
focus.
focus, and then then that would make sense why it didn't review so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're
people
like,
are
I wanted another comedy film.
But
'Cause
you're
that's
the
what he'd
funny
been
guy.
doing.
Why?
Yeah.
So are
Yeah.
his other movies more similar to Chaplin's
Probably.
movies as far as the
I
comedy?
guess. I haven't seen any of his other feature films, so I can't say
Okay.
entirely. And I obviously haven't seen Chaplin stuff yet. So
It would be very
but-
interesting to
yeah.
do an episode about that,
Mhm.
like a side episode of like, we watched Sherlock Jr. and we watched Limelight or
Yeah,
whatever.
true.
Limelight would be
Yes.
interesting because it has both of them.
Yeah,
in
Limelight's the only
Yeah, that would be
the only
cool.
time apparently like really that they both showed up in the same thing.
It.
Yeah, because Charlie Chaplin in like the world of acting, it's literally his comedy style is just called clowning, like those bits and gags. And I thought the humor in here wouldn't mostly fall under that
No, it doesn't seem
category.
like
It
it
was like
would.
very different, but it was still really funny.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of in the timeless way of like those jokes are just always funny.
Yeah. But what I do find interesting about, at least if I'm just taking these two people as like a representation of what comedy was in the 20s, they're both kind of known for just having like just very flat faces.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Just
read
kind
some
of
stuff
very
about that as
deadpan.
well. Yeah, that kind of has a connection to his earlier like the stage kind of production days, because like sometimes when he would get thrown around, he would be having fun and he was like laughing, and he noticed that when he laughed, the audience laughed less. Like he got less of a reaction, so he kind of from an earlier time was like, oh, I'm supposed to just have like the deadpan look, so like the kind of stoic face became like kind of his thing, like part of
That's
his brand
interesting.
as like an actor. So he's like the Great Stone Face or something was kind of his thing.
Kind of a dry humor.
Right, like
Yeah.
just these wacky things are happening, and he's just like,
That is more funny. I don't know
I
why,
stare.
but
Yeah.
it is.
No, like
That
some
is
of those looks that he would just like when I guess Annabelle is the
Yeah.
name of the character
Yeah.
when she's like, throwing like that like little piece of wood into the
Yeah.
fire, and he just gives her that expression of just like,
It's just
what
like,
are you doing? Like honestly, that's probably one of the funniest parts of the film for
it's
me.
pretty great.
And none of them
Totally works.
overacted. Like
Yeah.
they didn't have dialogue through the whole thing, but I totally understood what was going on, and none of them were overdoing it or
And be like just kind of physical enough to tell what's happening, what everyone's
yeah.
feeling and generally meaning to do and say,
Right.
but not excessive.
Yeah, and it's interesting seeing those bits where it's like there are dialogue boxes, but then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people are talking and they just don't put them there because they're like, you can figure out what this
Yeah,
is.
you don't even need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really interesting.
Which I really love in like foreign films when there's like a good translator doing the subtitles. The times where they like something is repeated enough, or you've just heard that phrase throughout the movie enough that they just like don't put the subtitles there, and you just know what it is. And I think that just makes it easier to be like invested in what's going on in the
Yeah.
film and to kind of feel just more present with it.
It's not
if
like
you're not
interrupting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes doing that where it's like, oh, I heard this phrase in there from earlier, and they decided to change the way that they translated it. So the person didn't say, come on, again, because you could figure out that that's there just by context,
Right.
or just because you know that phrase now that they said it before or whatever. I like that kind of thing. So it kind of in that way feels very similar. So I guess that's kind of a technique that's sort of still used on the fringes.
More or less,
Yeah.
for sure. Just some more visual elements, being relied on. Don't need to be told what's happening all the time, for sure.
Yeah. And that's something I
You can
really
see it.
appreciate about older movies in general, is I feel like
True.
there's a lot of stuff in modern Hollywood that really is just very directly spelled out at you. And the directors that don't do that now are the ones that I generally tend to appreciate. And just, the way that movies used to be made in general, I really appreciate. And once we get to Blade Runner, we can talk about that quite a bit, because there's a lot in Blade Runner that just, if they were making it now, they would try to explain literally everything to you.
And they did at the time, too.
Right? Well, yeah, because they did the theatrical cut, because they're
Yeah.
like, people wouldn't understand.
Right.
But Ridley Scott's like,
You
nah.
should watch that. I should watch that when we get to it. Because
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I have it, but I've never watched it.
The theatrical cut?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I should try it just to see how weird it is.
That'd be fun.
'Cause
Yeah,
I've seen the newer cuts several times. So we could watch both.
I don't know who's doing that report, but whoever it
Yeah, I
is
don't
should
know either.
watch every version of that film.
Is it me? I don't.
I don't think so.
I
I feel
don't
like
remember.
I remember that. But yeah, I have the big Blu-ray pack that's here's all 4 or 5 different cuts.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah,
Yeah, I
most
haven't
of them
seen
have
anyone
pretty
either.
minor differences. Like the director's cut and the final cut, I think are there's maybe a color grading difference and a unicorn
That
missing.
seems like the
maybe
biggest
I don't
thing.
even know.
Yeah.
But the theatrical cut's totally different. Do you know about that stuff, Hannah?
About which part?
The Blade Runner theatrical cut's different from the later cuts.
No, I haven't even seen that.
Okay, so Blade Runner's cool. If you watch the newer versions, because it's very just direct and just you have to just kind of watch it and figure out, and it's like a normal movie. It's whatever. The theatrical cut. I'm going to explain this really badly. The theatrical cut, the studio apparently was like, nobody's going to know what's happening, and they had Harrison Ford do this awful narration over everything. And it destroys
The
the
whole
movie.
movie?
Yeah,
I think I
guess
do
so.
remember you talking
I mean,
about that,
that's just at
actually.
least for a lot of. I haven't seen it again, but
It's bad.
yeah,
It's really
just
weird.
let me just tell you very directly, a lot of things.
It's a little cringy. It makes people kind of feel stupid.
Yeah,
Right. But Blade Runner is also known for having kind of this interesting ending where it's it could kind of go either way, and it makes you
Right.
think about it a little bit.
and it was different too.
They changed that for the theatrical cut too. They're like, no, we want a very clean cut, happy ending.
Yeah,
And so they had to figure out how to shove one in there, and it's not good.
yeah,
And just they cut out a lot of the interesting elements that make that movie, and hence it bombs.
And
It did
yes,
terribly.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But then over the decades later, it kind of has become a cult classic for sure. And Ridley Scott was kind of able to make the changes to it that he wanted to do, and you can definitely get the original vision now. It just took a while to get there.
It's so much different than the
Yeah,
theatrical
totally.
cut.
It's a totally different.
Because I mean, it's
experience.
when you have a completely different ending, you don't have any voiceover narration, and then you have I think that's another thing the Final Cut added. I guess we could talk about it, then when we get to that episode.
Yeah,
we
it says
probably should
Reese
talk about
is
more
on
then.
that
Yeah,
movie.
we're kind
Okay,
of moving
cool.
around. And
I'm looking forward to it then.
Yes,
I
it's
will
gonna be
do
a
my
good time.
research.
Very good, very good.
I will read the sequel book, Blade Runner 2, The Edge of
Dude,
Human.
yeah, I know. I keep seeing that sitting in my room. I was like, I should read that.
Which
Just
is
'cause. It's probably terrible, but
yeah, no,
probably
because it's
not terrible.
piggybacking off of the ending of the theatrical cut.
I think so. Yeah.
So
Like you said.
nothing about
That's
that makes
fine.
sense. Anyway,
It's of the time.
Anyway,
I like
the
that this movie
general-
doesn't explain it.
yes.
Like the
it's
theatrical
fine.
cut of Blade
They
Runner.
had to, yeah. Like they had to just be silent and do things and just let it speak for itself a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Like when there's text on screen, it's usually key information that you wouldn't otherwise be getting from just the film.
I
Exactly.
appreciate that he had two loves in his life,
Yeah.
Annabelle and his
Yes.
engine.
Man, that was a weird bit. It was like, okay, so the train was called the General. So that's
Yeah.
why it's called the General.
Right,
But then
that
does he also
was weird.
capture a general?
I guess. I
Spoiler
don't know
alert?
what rank the dude is, but they get
Something
him
like
in
that,
the
though,
end,
because
yeah.
he gives him his sword. It's like
Yeah.
he's kind of a big
important,
deal.
for sure. Yeah, I
Mhm.
remember being like kind of weirded out because I was like, I assumed, not knowing what the movie was about really, I thought it was going to be, like the general as in a person of rank. And then it was like, oh, it's just the train is called the General,
Right.
which again is actually from the story. Like the engine was actually called the General. It's a real thing.
Huh.
He wanted to use it, but they didn't want it to be in a comedy, so they didn't let him use it. I guess it
Really?
was
Oop.
too funny for the people who had the train, but they got some other old trains and made
Gotcha.
it work.
But then at the end, he gets promoted. And so I was like,
Yep.
okay, he's going to get promoted to be a general.
The general,
know.
yeah. I thought
And then
that
he's a
too.
lieutenant.
He's a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is maybe a joke. I don't know if
I
that
don't
was
know.
intended or not.
Maybe.
But it was funny.
Yeah, it worked.
It was a big cast too. They had a ton of
There's a lot of
people
people.
involved in those big scenes.
Yeah, I saw also in my various things. I just have all this weird trivia that I'm kind of throwing at you guys randomly.
Nice.
I hope that's okay.
That was your job.
They said there's shots where there's like the army's charging and retreating and stuff. It's the same group of extras in different costumes.
Huh.
They
like
still
they-
do that now.
Right. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it makes sense. Yeah. Cause like, you're not going to tell like that they're all the same people, but it's like 500 people.
I liked the scene with the horses running through and they're just literally
Yeah.
standing right in the road.
Yeah. He's just like, oh, I'm just
I'm
here.
like, dude, you probably
Inches
should have
away
died
from running horses.
so many times during this movie.
Yeah, totally.
It looked cool though.
Certainly did. I'm curious about I don't really know what it was intending with Annabelle being like, I don't even want to see you again unless you're in the army.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
was
pushing
funny.
it a little
I
bit.
don't know how I feel about
It
that.
was whatever. Yeah. She was like, cause she thought he was being like, yeah, being cowardly, but he was like, they won't take me. She's like, I don't know.
But why did her brother say that like he didn't even get in line?
Right, because they
he
didn't.
did, right?
They didn't see that though. I think because like they didn't even see him until he had already tried the couple times, which is a great scene. By
Okay.
the way, I really like his attempts to get in the line and
Mhm.
stuff. Like how he kind of keeps like sliding into the front of the line. It's really great.
Reminds me of that episode of SpongeBob where
Ooh,
he's
yes.
trying to get a ticket back to Bikini Bottom when he's at Rock Bottom. And there's all those giant weird fish and monsters.
Yeah.
And then one of them like lays an egg and that spawns like 3 more people in between them and he just like freaks out. It's so great.
I haven't seen that in so long.
Oh man.
I feel like actually SpongeBob, as far as its comedy, probably does take a lot from silent films. Like
Maybe,
there's a
yeah.
lot of like really interesting like physical gags in that
Mhm.
show.
Mhm.
True.
That like now that I look back at it from this vantage point, I realize like, oh, I don't think that's done in a lot of other cartoons.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's my
That's
small
true.
SpongeBob
We like
soapbox.
SpongeBob.
This
We
kind of
like
laid the
SpongeBob, yeah.
foundation for probably that cartoon humor
Mm-hmm.
before animation was
Mhm.
really a thing.
Yeah,
The humor is very similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think of also like, even when you go to like watching the original like Looney Tunes or whatever, it's
Yeah,
just
totally.
kind of straight out of the silent film era.
Yeah. True. It's kind of
Yeah,
same
no
style,
dialogue,
slapstick
just
and stuff. It was
And
a
Tom
lot
and
of that.
Jerry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess also probably before that with like, I mean, Felix the Cat, that kind
I
of
love
thing.
More
Felix.
classic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Felix the Cat is pretty rad. Yeah, that was actually, sorry, this is a really random detour that totally does not connect to anything. But there was a cat in, I've been reading through the Witcher books,
Yeah.
and there was a cat named Felix because
What?
for some reason the author of that series, Andrew Sikowski, just loves throwing in like random pop culture references
Nice.
into these like epic fantasy books.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird when it's just like he's talking about, Felix the cat.
in the Witchers.
Right, in this like
Witcher books.
really gory, like
Yeah.
dark, depressing book, and then there's just Felix the cat.
Is he Polish?
Yeah,
I don't know how Felix the cat is worldwide. I don't know if it is.
I mean,
don't
I
know how
assume
that
so.
works.
He
I
does
guess it
that though a
is.
lot in
Right.
the early books too.
Oh.
He's just kind of known for including weird pop culture references.
Must have missed all that.
I think most people know Felix was like the first cartoon, right?
Something like
He was
that.
the
I don't
first
know.
one.
It was
It's
probably
definitely
one of the
early.
first ones.
I
I'm not
think
sure.
so.
Yeah. If we were able to fact check that,
Indeed.
that could be fun. But
I'm scared
also,
to type. I don't want to make sounds.
oh, depressing.
I can. Do
I'm
you want me
almost
to?
positive because when I was younger, I had this weird fascination with old cartoons, and I learned how to draw
Yeah.
him. And I'm pretty sure he was the first ever animated cartoon.
Gotcha. I really like the Oswald cartoons.
Hmm.
I'm one of those people
I
that
don't know
like
if I've
as a
ever
kid I
seen
was like,
those.
oh, you know, Mickey's boring. I
Right.
like Oswald. And then I was slightly vindicated when Disney actually bought the rights back to Oswald.
And then they put him in those video
I love
games.
Oswald.
Yeah.
I didn't really play them.
I did.
Are
It
they
was
good?
so exciting. I got to play as Oswald.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
But he was only the
Epic
villain
Mickey.
in the first Epic
Yeah,
Mickey game.
right. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know who he was before that.
I was obsessed with Oswald.
I'd never heard of him.
Oh,
I was like, oh,
right.
cool. There's another guy.
Yeah, no, I had this book of like early Disney animation as a kid, and it was like going through the entire story of like how Mickey was created and whatever. And so there's like a big spread of Oswald and like going into all the history and like the weird like rights battles between Universal and Disney and
Weird.
whatnot. Which, you know, is a complete detour from the general, I guess.
It's
But
okay.
also,
we're kind of going down past. That's okay though.
do you
it's
know
kinda
what
related.
production company owned this? Was it like some
Ooh.
big company that's still around, or?
I don't know. I'm not sure there was any specific one actually, because I know
Huh.
I don't think he had any deals with any specific big studios until after this, which is kind of part of the rest of his story. But I don't know about this one. I will research this one.
So what was the second part of his career then?
So this movie kind of ruins him,
Mm.
unfortunately, since he doesn't make any money, and it's kind of, you know, not as many people liked it. He had to, apparently he decided to, or had to, like strike a deal with MGM to continue making movies, but it was a really bad deal for him because they didn't really let him have as much creative control as he had been having, and it just made for a much weirder production cycle, I guess, on all these things. Like, they kept coming out with projects over the next like decade, but he just wasn't as happy with them or as invested in them. Like, he was kind of unsatisfied with the production a lot of times. They apparently had him like start using stunt doubles, which he was like,
Why did they?
why? Like he didn't like that. And like, I think the movies did better. Like they did okay, but I think eventually there was enough of a rift there. It sounds like they got rid of him in like after he made a movie called What? No Beer.
I
And then
must
and
see
then
that.
They
That
got rid of him
immediately.
after that, even though it did really well.
Huh.
So I think it just kind of became too much of a rift between them.
Do you know if he was directing those as well, or
I don't think he did. No.
no? So he only. So I know he directed The General.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
he co-directed.
co-directed.
Yeah, who co-directed with him?
The other director was Clyde Bruckman, I think I just saw.
Had he worked with Chaplin? Sorry, not Chaplin. Buster Keaton
Reese.
before. I'm
I-
obsessed with Charlie
I'm not
Chaplin.
sure.
Get it
We'll not do
together.
enough detailed
Every
research
episode,
on all
I will
this
mention
stuff.
Charlie Chaplin. Just like every episode, you will mention a certain actor that I will now not mention because I'm going to wait for you to somehow work him in.
I can't believe we talked about Blade Runner and I didn't mention Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, it's depressing.
I'm
you could
sorry.
have.
I was thinking about him and I
Sure.
just didn't say his name.
That's fair.
Yeah, I was distracted.
Well, to be fair, we're more, probably all three of us are constantly thinking about
That's
Ryan
fair.
Gosling.
I was
little
just
bit.
like the
He's in
image
there
of his
somewhere.
abs came into my brain and I like quit functioning.
Yeah.
Yeah. My apologies.
And he's got such a non-symmetrical face, yet it's still so attractive. I don't-
Truly, yes.
That's
Growing up, I was like, he's not attractive, Mom. And then she's like, just you wait, watch his movies. And I did. And
And then,
here we are.
La La Land hits, and then
Oof.
that's it.
Oof.
Really appreciate it.
It's different, man. Okay.
Clyde
Anyway.
Bruckman was very involved in Buster Keaton's career, it turns out. Wrote a lot of the stuff, like Sherlock Jr. And there's something coming up on here, The Buster Keaton Show, 1950 to 1951.
Oh,
A
I
show?
did not know about that.
He redeemed himself with a show.
Live show with Buster recreating and updating his classic routines. He
So
looks
if
pretty
it's
older.
50 to 51, it probably didn't do too well.
I assume so. I don't know.
Did not get renewed, clearly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Didn't last very long. Yeah, I don't think there's too much more to talk about. Yeah, he kind of was. Yeah, he was in a bad place for sure with the MGM deal and stuff. It sounded like he got divorced and stuff during that time when the general was failing and stuff too. Got divorced, fell into like alcoholism and stuff. It was not great.
That's
good.
depressing.
Yeah.
Because I was impressed with his involvement in this one, acting, producing, and co-directing.
It looks like it was more or less kind of an independent thing.
Yeah.
The production company listed on the Wikipedia page just says Buster Keaton Productions and Joseph M. Schenck Productions.
Nice.
Cool.
And Schenck was kind of the person who produced and financed a lot of this stuff as well. He was very tied in.
That is interesting to like kind of, I guess, start out with your career having more creative control than later in your career. That's
that's kind of
not
the
what
opposite,
you
yeah.
want, you know. Like I
Right.
know a lot of other directors from, I guess, kind of later than this, but still, you know, what we'd consider like early films that like start out doing all of these like big studio pictures, and they're like roped into these ridiculous contracts, and then eventually they start having enough of a name themselves that they're able to like break free and start their own production company.
Yeah.
That's really interesting
It's
and
kind of the
kind of
opposite, yeah.
depressing. Yeah.
So I think he worked with MGM, I think, for just like probably a decade-ish. And then it sounds like he got out of that. And I think he kept working. I kind of got lost once that point hit. And like, I think he definitely did different things like acting, gag writing, just kind of various things. But I think he was better after that. I think
He
turned
needed
out
someone to
pretty
throw
okay.
him through a crowd again.
Yeah, exactly.
Find his passion.
Oh, he was in a Twilight Zone episode.
No
Of
way.
personal
Which
interest to
one?
me. I didn't write down the
That's okay.
It's like
Sorry.
Once Upon a Time or something.
love
He's like a
Twilight Zone.
time traveler or something.
Okay,
And
cool.
I'm not even positive that I've seen it. I've seen a lot of Twilight Zone episodes. I don't know if I've seen this one, but
That's
I like Twilight
crazy.
Zone.
I really appreciated how well you could see their faces in this one after a trip to the moon.
True.
Yeah.
Like
that's fair.
actually getting to see all the actors' faces and the close-ups and the wide shots was nice.
Indeed.
Random side note.
Yeah, no, it was really
Yeah, Once Upon a Time.
the actual acting. I felt like through the whole movie felt pretty similar to what we have now, and just really solid. Like,
Yeah.
probably a lot of movies that we could cover on this list that don't have performances nearly as good as this.
I thought the same thing. I was like, I know actors who can't do what they did with words, and here they are in the silent movie with this awesome storytelling. Like they were great. They did great.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. This is kind of also a detour, sort of, but which is okay. I guess saying this is probably not on topic is probably not a great segue for a podcast. If I'm being honest,
It's okay.
It's technically a segue, but then I segued into talking about segues, which
It's part of the joke.
probably works worse now. But speaking
So
of
on that note.
segues, the role that Annabelle has in the film
Yes.
is just a little off for me, and I guess probably that would not have been a point of contention at the time for people,
Perhaps, yeah.
but it is now. Like I feel like that's the one place in which that movie feels like it holds up maybe the least well. Is just it feels like Annabelle's there and she kind of tries to help sometimes, but she's just very incompetent, and he's
Right.
just totally exasperated with her. And it just
She's like part of
feels-
the jokes in a bad way.
Yeah,
like
I
she's just
love
the
that-
butt of the jokes.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
She's
just
not
a
even damsel in
person to be
distress all the
saved.
time.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, she's kind of annoying.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, don't you just like want the women to just like stay out of the wars, right,
yeah.
guys?
It's like, can't stand it when that happens.
She's trying to be helpful. Gross.
Right.
Why can't she just be in distress and just
Yeah.
let me do all of the saving or
Go
something?
back to the
Yeah.
kitchen and make me a
Definitely kinda
sandwich.
gets rough with her sometimes. I feel like I remember his like hands going around her throat once or twice. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's a
Hey,
little, it pushes it for sure. It wouldn't
maybe
fly
don't.
today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And just some of those death glares.
True.
He had the best death glares, though.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, they were impressive.
They're so funny. Poor Annabelle.
Yeah, it did feel like she got the short end of the stick in this movie.
Yeah.
And it was more interesting in contrast as well to some of the stuff I've seen from this era, because it wasn't even like this thing of like women are hardly in movies or aren't given great roles or anything. Like I've seen some silent films that were directed by women and written by them. Like some of Charlie Chaplin's like early stuff, I'm going back to Chaplin, I'm sorry.
So,
But some of the
Wow.
earliest things that he was in were directed by women.
Really?
Yeah. Specifically, her name was, I think, Mabel something, but she had this, like, she was popular in the, like, early Keystone comedies that are, like, you know, now just kind of like these shorts, I guess, but were considered at the time full-length films.
Huh.
But, you know, she was just, like, a pretty popular character pre-Chaplin, and directed her own stuff.
Right.
Doesn't seem to get the short end of the stick as a character, but I don't know. So I guess it maybe means that this movie can be held accountable for that a little bit more if it's not just
Yeah.
like entirely the cultural norm to do that.
perhaps.
Was it a joke towards like the Civil War era,
I
or
guess
was
it's
it the 20s? Because I can see
Right.
both
Oh.
ways.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, again, that's the thing that makes it feel a little bit worse in a way, is that it wasn't like aggressively demeaning in a way that seems like it could be like a poke at an earlier time,
Right.
because it was just like there subtly,
Yeah.
I guess.
True.
And again, it also doesn't feel like it is trying to comment on anything. Like
Right.
it's not commenting on the Civil War
No.
at all.
All
you
right.
know?
It wasn't really political.
Yeah, no. It's just kind of telling its basic stories. Like,
He just
here it
wanted
is.
to blow stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in proper action movie fashion, it's just not great to women.
This is true. This is fair.
It's, you know, maybe one of the earliest examples of that.
Didn't women start getting more rights right after the 20s also?
I think so.
Wow.
Perhaps.
I don't
Prior to the
fully know
I
the
took like
history of.
3 years of
Don't know.
American history. I'm failing.
See, yeah, I never actually took American history because I was always like, oh, that's kind of, I don't know. If I can get out of it and do world history, then that's what I'll do. So
Yeah.
I know, like, in the broad picture of like, here's the entire span of Western culture, and I've taken that like a trillion times. But like, I can tell you probably more about like the ancient Greeks than I could about
That's
America in the 20s.
Yeah.
That's fair. It looks like the women's suffrage movement happened in like the mid 1900s, sort of.
Okay.
So,
like 1905, 8, somewhere in there.
yeah, it says that there's actually a 1912 film called Votes for Women.
Hmm.
Yes, it was early
Cool.
1900s when the states first started doing it. Now I remember. So women were starting to.
Feminism
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Getting there.
happening by the 20s. They're
Cool.
fine.
Rough.
Yeah,
Yep.
not for Annabelle though.
Not.
Oh.
Yeah. I
She
mean,
had it rough.
I guess her version of feminism is just, hey, look it, I'm here,
Guess so.
instead of like,
I do exist.
I do things
man.
that are useful, which is rough. But you know,
Join the army, or I don't want to see you.
right?
I'm gonna say
is
that
weird.
to a man someday and
Yeah.
see what he says.
just
Yeah.
see the response.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Any guy that's hitting on you, if you're not interested, just be like, I don't even want you to see me again unless you're in the army.
Yeah.
I might text this
Uh-oh.
to someone today.
Oh, no.
Just like. Just a large message to just like every guy in your contacts list is like, I
Yes.
don't even want to see you again unless
I
you
don't
join
even
the
want to
army.
look at you. Your value comes from being in the military.
That
And that's about
$700
it.
billion has to go somewhere.
You've got a point.
Sorry, I just roasted America.
Oops.
That's fine.
Whoops.
Whoops,
I
this
didn't
was a
mean that.
dating hack on our film podcast. So
Whoops.
take that.
Yeah, that's a very useful tip though.
I think
Anytime
so.
you're not interested in somebody, just say
I
that
don't
they
even
have to
wanna
go
look
risk
at
their
you.
lives.
Give her a good
The
legacy.
audacity of you showing up here without being in the military. How dare
Specifically,
you?
you need to enlist in the Civil War.
In the Civil War.
In the Confederate Army.
Gosh dang it. Yes, in the Confederate Army.
Oh, no.
Nobody will ever do
Eek.
that. Which
Then I will be single
I don't know.
forever.
Some of them might.
I mean, if you want it, it's a good way to do it. You know.
You can call me Hannibal, and I will be single forever.
Oh, no.
Oh.
That's great.
Anyway.
Hopefully, with more agency.
Yes.
I don't think I have
I
any,
think so.
any other points on here. The only other piece of trivia that I kind of liked as a person who buys movies, it was apparently the first silent feature film to get a Blu-ray release.
Really?
And I
Good
found that
job,
kind of
bud.
interesting.
Wow.
Busted.
Of course, it's the American film that gets it, not the legendary British modern times I went onto this episode on a movie that I added to a list that I made, and I'm over here roasting it for not being another movie that I did not stick on that list.
Chaplin?
What is wrong with me?
Just put a Chaplin movie on there, and we'll change it to 101 films.
We'll get a bonus episode about
Honestly.
Charlie Chaplin.
Well, that would be fun. I would love to make some side episodes
Maybe
here and there.
I will make an entire side series for Ryan Gosling, and you can make one for Chaplin.
We could just go through every single thing that they've ever
Exactly.
done.
Yes,
gonna
I'm
say-
so down.
Delicious.
Patrick Williams and his people do that already for some
Mm.
people, but not for Ryan Gosling.
Not Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling deserves it, and that's all I'm gonna say.
That's
But
fair.
boy, he's got such a wide range of things.
Yeah.
I
And
might
he's
hate my
really good
life.
at not
I don't know.
talking.
It's true.
He does that in a lot of
He
his films.
doesn't even need
I
to.
mean, I do like the
Oh,
movies I've
same
seen
with
him
Charlie
so
Chaplin.
far.
I know, right? I was like a silent film actor. Wow, the
Whoa.
talent.
Okay, my last
Mm.
point for why I still at the moment prefer Chaplin to Keaton. Charlie Chaplin is more attractive. There, I said it.
Gasp.
I said it.
Reese, no.
Even with the mustache.
Fine.
Wow,
Yep.
fine.
He
With
just
the
is.
Hitler
Why?
mustache.
With the Hitler mustache.
Mm.
I know that's controversial. Actually, I guess it kind of is, but you know what? He's
Maybe.
still attractive. I think
Okay.
Charlie Chaplin is more attractive.
Would you go gay for Charlie Chaplin?
Yes, I would.
Wow.
On the record,
Yes, I would.
Yes.
10 out of 10. Would gay.
For Charlie Chaplin.
Good to know.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Good to know.
So I highly recommend you watch this film
It's very easy.
after watching 30 Charlie Chaplin films. And,
I have not seen
Boy.
Charlie Chaplin movies, so I really feel like I need to go watch one now.
well, we're going to get to The Great Dictator. Which
Oh,
is
yes. Oh, yes.
Which is Charlie Chaplin being Hitler. So that
Perfect
could be
mix.
a fun time.
That
but
is
also
interesting.
probably am not allowed to be attracted to him in that movie.
Because
know.
he's Hitler.
Yeah, but he's
I mean-
simultaneously playing like a Jewish shoemaker who also looks like Hitler or something.
You have a type, Reese. That's all I'm going to
Oh,
say.
Oh, God.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I'm
that's
kidding.
rough.
You were supposed to call me out like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
kidding. No,
Cool.
this was a good one. I felt like it definitely was a good stepping stone for the next movies.
Yeah. What are we doing next? I forgot.
I'm doing Metropolis.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
1927, I think.
Finally, I'll
One
get to
year
see-
later.
I was actually that was something I thought was really interesting about The General is it's more in the line with like modern American cinema than Metropolis is. Metropolis feels more like something that would have come out closer to A Trip to the Moon,
Yeah. Makes
except it's
sense.
really long.
Right.
Just a warning. It's like 150 minutes.
And it's
Oh, yeah.
nothing.
So
I know nothing about that movie, so I'm excited.
it's
I also
gonna be
knew
an
nothing
interesting
about this
time.
movie.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't either.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard of Buster Keaton.
Right.
I've heard him in the same conversation as Charlie Chaplin, but again, not the same thing.
Turns out. Kind of different.
There's so much sass.
There's a lot. Well, that's the thing about Charlie Chaplin. He has a lot more sass.
That's why you like him. We need some sassafras in
A
here.
bit more sass.
Ooh.
I think we should do a side episode where we go through like we do modern times. We do like Sherlock Jr. I think it would be fun. I would like to do like a small mini series on silent films.
Mhm.
But at the moment, like we've got a few more. So we've got Metropolis. We've got The Passion of
Metropolis?
Joan of Arc.
Is it 150 minutes of silent film?
Is 150 minutes of silent film.
Aww.
It's classic. Don't
It
worry.
came out a year
It has
after the General.
That's the first movie we'll cover that actually has a score written for it
Oh, nice.
and everything, and it's excellent. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, it's probably one of my favorite scores
Cool.
in movies.
Okay.
And after that, we do a short Passion of Joan of Arc, which is also silent. And I think we might have one or two more silent films after that because we go up to I think
Dang.
Grand Illusion is also a silent film. So we have, if you're a listener, we have yet several more weeks of silent films.
So bring snacks.
Bring snacks, watch them films.
Crunchy snacks because you don't have to worry about missing the dialogue for once in your life.
It's true. I mean, there are a lot of text boxes.
Yes, but you can eat crunchy snacks and read.
That's a good point. Yeah, I see what you're going for there. I was thinking like looking down and grabbing a snack,
Oh,
but
that's
I guess
true.
you don't have to really look. 'Cause
Focus, but eat your
You
chips.
can just have that muscle memory of where that bag is after all those decades of practice that all
I've
of us
been
have.
working up to this moment.
Exactly. So what would you guys rate it, in the context of the series so far?
Man,
I also gave it 4.5 stars
Same.
on Letterboxd
Same.
because
just in terms of enjoyment and appreciation of it,
yeah,
kind of objectively. Like,
Unsurprisingly,
excuse me.
the films on this list are
right,
good.
Yeah.
oh
It's almost like
wow,
we tried to. Well,
It
you
was
tried to
so
make them that way. Huh?
yeah. I think Hunter
Yeah, that's
used the
the
word
point.
charming in his review, and I used the same word charming, and I just thought it was so clever. Was
Yeah.
like what kept coming up
For sure.
for me.
Yeah, I think it really just blew me away from the standpoint of just how solid the action was. Like there was actually a bit, like I watched it early this morning when I woke up, and I was like semi asleep through one bit of it, and then there was some big action set piece that happened, and I like jumped. I like sat up and I got up. I was like, oh no, what's gonna happen to him? And then I realized, wait, I'm watching a silent film from 1926, and I am experiencing all of the suspense that I experienced in the last Mission Impossible film. That's crazy.
Yes.
That means
Indeed.
it rocks.
Good time. Certifiable good time.
Good job,
So-
Bustin Keater. I keep wanting to.
Bustin' Keater.
That's what my brain literally keeps saying, and I keep correcting myself right before I talk. Yeah,
I like
Buster
Bustin'
Keaton.
Keater.
Bustin' Keater just sounds so fun. Sorry, I've been trying not to say that this whole time, but yes, that's a good sign.
It is a good sign. It's a good movie. Bustin' Keater is officially top 10 silent film directors. I feel like we could pretty much say that certifiably.
Yes.
Got to be in that top 10.
Yes.
Definitely.
Bustin', not Buster.
Uh-huh.
Bustin' Keater.
Bustin' Keater.
Buster Keaton is like 12, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good ranking. We
I want
could do
that
the
on a
full
t-shirt.
as we go. We
Right.
could be ranking our silent film
Yeah.
directors.
It's gonna be hard to go lower
But,
than that
Yeah.
because they're all so iconic.
hmm I don't think that this personally beats A Trip to the Moon for me.
I thought the same thing. I really, really loved A Trip to the Moon.
I think it just has. I like a fantasy.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a bit more just way out there.
The special
True.
effects and the
Yeah,
I don't know.
imagination
I
was
kinda
bigger.
like this one a little bit more.
that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it did a little bit more for me, which is weird because I feel like I would like the things that you guys are talking about for Trip to the Moon, but I don't know.
But
It was
the
so
action is
fun.
definitely better in
So-
this film.
So fun.
Yes. Buster was a
I
bit
do
of
like
a
me some good
pyromaniac,
action
maybe.
movies.
There was fire in one of those last
Yeah.
scenes. It just
Yeah.
kind of went right
Catching
along the
fire.
edge of the
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
I was like,
crazy.
"Ooh,
There was
boy."
some really
Absolutely
good
on fire.
shots.
Yeah.
And he
They
totally
done
jumped
did
through
it.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Good times. All right. Well, we will see you guys again next week for Metropolis. But as we say at the end of every episode of Movie Overload,
Can't remember. I'm blanking.
We
I'm
did
trying
this
to
for the
think of
intro, too.
Well, I mean, I could arguably say again, like last time, that's a line from the movie because it's kind of silent, but they actually had dialogue. I'm trying to think of what they said. And
you
I,
even
like,
did the report.
there were
You could
lines.
have written something down.
Boy.
I just didn't think about it. I did not even think about this moment this whole time. I
We
didn't
will
think about
have
it.
this for the next one.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That was also a line from the movie.
Wow.
Yeah, like I feel like there had to have been something.
Honestly, your silence works pretty well. Like you could have just easily been doing the Buster Keaton death
Yeah,
glare
right.
at the
yeah,
microphone. and
that's
we
what I
just
was
didn't
saying. Like,
hear
yeah,
it.
like it kind of still
felt it,
works.
though.
I can make this joke like 5 more times,
Yeah.
and
you can do it every time, and it's
it'll
totally not
halfway
going to
That's a
pass.
line
happen.
from
It
the
worked best
movie.
with.
But then it actually
Moon.
will be something that we say at the end of
Yeah.
every episode.
I'll do better next time. I'll see. This is like the good reminder because I failed this time for real. I feel like
Tragic.
Oh,
And,
failure.
Next time, now I'll be like watching movies and I'll be like watching for a line. Like
Yeah.
you watch for a line to put in your Letterboxd review. I'm gonna watch for a line to say at the end of the podcast.
That's gorgeous. Man, I wish we were doing One Wonderful Sunday because there's this
Mm.
really great line that I'd like to end it with, which is, "That bird looks depressed."
There you go.
Which just makes it
That-
just doesn't make sense even really in the context of the film. I love it.
So
Anyway,
good. There's your
we'll see you
stand-in,
guys.
fashion
Hunter
line.
just needs
Yeah.
to practice his death glare, and that will cover our
Yeah.
bases. Just
Hopefully, if you
keep
can make it
working on it.
make sound, If you can make your glare make sound so the listeners can hear
What
it.
a death glare make? That's okay. We don't have to answer that question right now.
That's what mine sounds like. I don't know about you
I
guys.
guess I'm done. We need to wrap up for sure. We're running out of time
Yeah,
here.
sorry.
All
I've
right.
got to get off to work, I guess.
Gotta go make that
is
money.
That is the time. I will make approximately 2 cents.
Woohoo.
Cool.
That's
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.